Imagine spending roughly tens of millions of dollars on one of the most sophisticated fighter aircraft ever built. A fighter designed to see without being seen. A fighter whose entire concept revolves around sensors, data fusion, electronic warfare, and stealth. And then imagine receiving the aircraft without its radar. That sounds almost impossible. But in 2026, that is exactly what happened. The US Marine Corps confirmed that it had accepted 6 F-35B fighters without radars installed in their noses. The reason wasn't that the United States suddenly decided radar was unnecessary. Quite the opposite. The problem is that the F-35 is moving toward a new generation radar called the AN/APG-85, while the hardware needed to install that radar is not simply interchangeable with the aircraft's existing AN/APG-81 configuration. So instead of stopping production completely, the program has accepted some aircraft with ballast in place of the radar. And that creates a remarkable image: a 5th-generation stealth fighter sitting on a runway, waiting for one of its most important sensors. But here's where the story becomes much more complicated, because the radar issue is only one piece of a much larger F-35 readiness problem. A new U.S. Government Accountability Office report found that in fiscal year 2025, only 25% of the F-35 fleet was fully mission capable, meaning capable of performing all of its assigned missions. The broader mission capable rate was 44%, and that number has fallen substantially since 2021. So what is actually happening to America's most important fighter program? Is the F-35 in crisis? Is China really responsible? And why would the Pentagon accept a fighter without a radar in the first place? Today, we're going inside the problem. To understand why this story matters, we first need to understand what the F-35 actually is. The F-35 Lightning II isn't simply a faster version of an older fighter. Its value comes from something different: information. The aircraft combines radar data, infrared sensors, electronic warfare information, identification systems, and information received from other platforms. The pilot doesn't necessarily need to manually interpret every individual sensor. The aircraft attempts to turn thousands of pieces of information into a coherent tactical picture. That's one of the fundamental ideas behind 5th-generation air combat. Stealth is important, but stealth alone isn't enough. A stealth aircraft needs to know what's around it. It needs to detect threats. It needs to identify targets. It needs to communicate. And it needs to make decisions faster than the opponent. That is why the radar sitting inside the F-35's nose is so important. The existing AN/APG-81 AESA radar is already an advanced system, but the F-35 program is moving toward the AN/APG-85 as part of the broader Block 4 modernization effort. And that's where the trouble begins. Why build the airplane first and install the radar later? The answer is manufacturing. The F-35 program isn't building a handful of experimental aircraft. It is producing a large global fleet. Stopping aircraft production every time a subsystem falls behind would create another problem: a production bottleneck. But the new radar isn't simply a component that can be pulled out of one aircraft and dropped into another. The transition from the APG-81 to the APG-85 involves changes to the aircraft's hardware and integration architecture. According to reporting on the issue, the mounting arrangements for the new radar are not backwards compatible with the older configuration. That means the program faced an uncomfortable choice: build aircraft around the future configuration, or continue producing aircraft around the older configuration, and potentially face more extensive modifications later. The program chose the first path for some aircraft. So these F-35s were accepted with ballast where the radar normally goes. And that detail is important, because these aircraft aren't being presented as combat-ready radarless fighters. They are essentially aircraft moving through production while waiting for the intended radar solution. That distinction matters. This isn't the US military saying, open quote, "We don't need radar anymore," close quote. It's almost the opposite. The radar is considered important enough that the program is changing the aircraft to accommodate the next generation system. So why replace an already sophisticated radar? Because air combat is changing. AESA, Active Electronically Scanned Array technology, allows the radar to electronically steer its beam without physically moving the antenna. That gives modern fighters enormous flexibility in how they search, track, and manage targets. The APG-85 is intended to provide enhanced capabilities as part of the F-35's future Block 4 configuration. But here's another point worth emphasizing. You will sometimes hear headlines claiming that the APG-85 is simply a radar designed to track stealth fighters. That's too simplistic. A radar's performance against a stealth aircraft depends on many factors: frequency, aspect angle, target characteristics, range, atmospheric conditions, electronic warfare, signal processing, and the geometry of the engagement. There is no magic radar that simply switches on and makes stealth disappear. The real objective is to improve the F-35's ability to detect, track, and engage increasingly sophisticated threats. And that is exactly why delaying the radar creates such a difficult problem, because the F-35 isn't being upgraded in isolation. It is being upgraded because the threat environment is evolving. Now we reach the timeline. The first production lot of the AN/APG-85 has been scheduled for 2028. That doesn't mean every F-35 in existence will suddenly receive a new radar in 2028. And it doesn't mean the entire F-35 fleet is currently flying without radar. The issue concerns the transition to future production configurations and the delayed availability of the new radar. The US military therefore has to manage two realities at once: keep producing aircraft and wait for the new sensor architecture to mature. The result is an awkward production sequence. Aircraft can physically exist, engines can run, flight testing can happen, pilots can fly them, but one of the aircraft's most important mission systems isn't ready to be installed. And this is where modern military technology becomes fascinating. A fighter aircraft is no longer just an airplane. It's a flying computer. And a flying computer is only as capable as the network of hardware and software supporting it. One delayed component can create problems throughout the system. Now we need to address one of the biggest claims surrounding this story: China. China has tightened controls on exports involving strategically important critical minerals and materials. Among the materials frequently discussed in the defense supply chain debate are samarium, neodymium, and gallium. And there is a very real strategic problem here. Modern militaries depend on materials that may be produced, refined, or processed in only a small number of countries. Rare earth magnets are used across advanced technologies. Electronic components depend on specialized materials, and military systems increasingly depend on complicated global supply chains. That creates strategic vulnerability. But we need to be careful. There is not enough evidence to simply state that China cut off rare earth exports, and therefore the 6 F-35s were delivered without radars. The documented immediate explanation for the radarless F-35s is the delayed availability and integration of the AN/APG-85, including compatibility and production issues. The connection between China's mineral policies and the APG-85 delay is therefore better described as a broader supply chain concern, not a proven one-to-one explanation for the 6 aircraft. That distinction is extremely important, because military reporting can quickly turn a complicated industrial problem into a simple headline: China stopped rare earths, America lost F-35 radars. Reality is much more complicated, and ironically, the deeper story may actually be more important. The radar story is dramatic, but the most serious warning sign may be sitting somewhere else: readiness. A June 2026 Government Accountability Office report examined the F-35 sustainment problem, and the numbers are difficult to ignore. In fiscal year 2021, the F-35 fleet's mission-capable rate was approximately 67%. By fiscal year 2025, it had fallen to 44%. But the full mission-capable rate fell from 38% to just 25%. Let's translate that into normal language. Imagine you have a squadron of 100 aircraft. The GAO's full mission-capable measure would imply that only about 25 aircraft were capable of performing all assigned missions at the measured time. That does not mean 75 aircraft were permanently broken, and it does not mean only 25 F-35s could fly. Those are very different concepts. An aircraft can be flyable, but unable to perform every mission because of maintenance, spare parts, software, weapons integration, or other limitations. That's why the 25% figure needs context. But the trend is still significant. the F-35 is becoming a larger part of American air power, and keeping that fleet operational is proving difficult. The GAO identified several problems affecting F-35 sustainment: spare parts shortages, maintenance challenges, software delays, corrosion, and a continuing dependence on contractors and external support. The program is attempting to respond. The F-35 Joint Program Office has introduced what it calls the Global Support Solution Reset. The plan is estimated to require an additional $13.7 billion through fiscal year 2031. Think about what that means. The United States isn't merely buying the aircraft. It has to build an ecosystem around the aircraft. Parts, maintenance infrastructure, software, technicians, training, data systems, repair facilities, supply chains, and eventually upgrades. That's the hidden cost of fifth-generation warfare. You don't simply purchase a fighter, you purchase an entire industrial and technological architecture. And if one part of that architecture falls behind, the aircraft's availability can suffer. 35. The aircraft was designed to solve one of the biggest problems in modern warfare: complexity. It brings sensors together. It connects pilots. It processes information. It combines stealth with electronic warfare. It is supposed to give commanders a better understanding of the battlefield. But that sophistication creates another vulnerability. The aircraft itself becomes extraordinarily complicated, and maintaining complicated systems at scale is difficult. The F-35 isn't necessarily failing because the concept is wrong. In fact, many of its technological ideas are precisely why so many countries continue to want the aircraft. The problem is that technology on this scale has to work not just once, but thousands of times. It has to work in deserts, in Europe, in the Pacific, on aircraft carriers, at expeditionary bases, during wartime, and under pressure. That's a completely different engineering challenge. The next few years will therefore be critical. The F-35 program has to solve several problems simultaneously. First, the AN/APG-85 has to move from development and integration into reliable production. Second, the aircraft needs to absorb the broader Block 4 modernization program. Third, sustainment has to improve. Fourth, spare parts availability must become more predictable. And fifth, the United States needs a more resilient industrial base capable of supporting the aircraft without excessive dependence on vulnerable supply chains. The radar problem is therefore a symptom, not necessarily the disease. And that distinction may be the most important lesson of all. It looks like a contradiction, a stealth fighter without one of its primary sensors. But the reality is more nuanced. 6 Marine Corps F-35Bs were accepted without radars because the program is transitioning toward the new AN/APG-85, whose production and integration have been delayed. The aircraft are not representative of an entire fleet suddenly becoming radarless, and China's rare earth restrictions are part of a much broader strategic supply chain issue, but they should not be presented as the proven direct cause of those 6 aircraft lacking radars. The bigger concern is readiness. The GAO says the F-35's full mission-capable rate fell to 25% in fiscal year 2025, while its overall mission-capable rate fell to 44%. That doesn't mean the F-35 is useless. It doesn't mean America's air power has collapsed, and it doesn't erase what the aircraft has achieved. But it does reveal something important. The hardest part of building a 5th-generation fighter may not be making the aircraft. It may be keeping thousands of them ready. Because in war, technological superiority doesn't exist on paper. It exists on the runway. It exists when the pilot climbs into the cockpit. It exists when the aircraft launches. And ultimately, it exists only if the aircraft is ready when the nation needs it. The F-35 was designed to dominate the future battlefield. Now the United States faces a different challenge: making sure that future fighter is available in sufficient numbers to actually dominate it. Stealth is powerful, sensors are powerful, technology is powerful, but readiness is what turns technology into combat power. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into military technology, modern warfare, and the systems shaping the next generation of combat. Thanks for watching.